Thanks. This is a great pleasure to be here, and we had some great engineering discussions, and I think we heard some great science fiction writers this morning talking about dreams of going to Mars and discussions about that. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the politics. See if I can make this work. There we go. Maybe not. You know, I am a retired NASA guy, and I believe in redundancy. I brought two flash drives this morning and a PC to make sure I had my charts, and now we've got a single point failure in the control here. Okay, well, we are here. I've used this as an illustration before to talk about building political sustainability. I think the quote of the conference came yesterday as one of the JPL guys said, you know, we have the technology to go to Mars. What we lack is the will. Currently, we have got a tenuous political consensus. I think it's a tenuous political consensus on going to Mars. And it's very partisan, as many people have pointed out. The difference between theory and reality of what goes on between the White House and Congress. Let me tell you this, and I may rain on your parade just a little bit here. I mean, I'm a Mars enthusiast. I'm a space exploration enthusiast. I have believed since I was a very young boy that it was important for humanity to go into space and that America should lead the way, but we are not in the majority, okay? And if you want to go to Mars, I think you have permission. Go. But what we're really talking about is not can we go to Mars, it's can we take money from the federal treasury to pay for going to Mars. Remember, Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, no money will be dispersed from the treasury except on direct appropriation from the United States Congress. So the question is not should we go to Mars or do we have permission to go to Mars, or do we have technology to go to Mars? It's, when you talk about political sustainability, you're talking about have we got the consensus to take the taxpayers' money to pay for that? And you all know that there are many competing priorities for tax money. I had a recent experience. I got to go up on Capitol Hill, and we went around to several members' offices, and we were talking about space exploration, and I was once again impressed, as probably Ann knows very well, that every member up on the Hill, their staff, every hour gets somebody else in their office talking about their particular thing, and it always comes back to, could you give us some money? Could you put us an appropriation? Sometimes it's enabling legislation and other things, but a lot of it's got to do with the money. So the question that we're really focused on here is how do we build a political sustainability to get the money from Congress? Now, if you go back to the golden age of science fiction literature, from the Jules Verne up through Robert Heinlein, all the trips to the moon, all the trips to Mars, they were financed by billionaire industrialists, or maybe in those days millionaire industrialists. Now you need to have almost trillionaire industrialists to finance that sort of thing. But if you want to get political sustainability for a government program, which is different, then we have to build political sustainability. It's always fun for me, who I don't live in Washington, to come here inside the Beltway and watch what goes on. The first thing I do is I get to the hotel room and I turn on the local news, and they'll talk about the weather and they'll talk about the traffic, and there may be a little blurb on what Metro's doing today or something, but the sport of interest is Capitol Hill and the White House and maybe the Supreme Court. In Washington, that takes the place of what high school football is for the rest of the nation. People pay a lot of attention to, sports and high school football out in the great flyover parts of this country, and somewhat less about what goes on in Washington, only if it directly affects them, and generally with negative reports. And I live in Texas, and I'm sorry, there are a lot of people that don't really like what goes on in Washington there, but the point is, if you want to build political sustainability, you have to have many members, you have to have the president, they have to understand that their constituents are interested. So if you want to build political sustainability, you have to build popular support, which does not necessarily happen in Washington, D.C. And the problem that we've got is that too few people do not see the effect of space exploration on their lives. They don't see what the benefit of going to Mars is in their lives. Now remember, people just like you and me, we got to get to work, we got to make sure the car starts, we got to, make plans to pay for the kids' education or maybe for our retirement, but a lot of day-to-day living doesn't have an event horizon that's more than a week away, or maybe a month away. Maybe it's, how do I get to the next paycheck? So if you want people to be interested in what the space program is doing, you have to make it relevant to their daily lives. It's not Tang and Velcro, as we used to say in the 60s, nor is it GPS and smartphones today. There's a tenuous link between NASA and those objects, but it's not a direct link. So you have to figure out what it is that makes it important to people to think that space exploration, going to Mars, is important. We're not going to have a Kennedy moment again. A lot of people have said that at this conference. I certainly agree with it. That was a particularly interesting geopolitical time. Kennedy had objectives that he wanted to make. It was not really about the moon. It wasn't about science. It was about demonstrating the superiority of democracy and capitalism over communism and a planned economy. And so he proposed a goal that he thought would demonstrate this to the world, which it did in the end. But he went around and made these dramatic speeches. I imagine that many of you in the audience could quote, we go to the moon, we'll go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. Those speeches are great and dramatic and emotional. And why did the president make them? Because he was selling an unpopular program. If you go back to the 60s and you look at the polling, people did not really see the benefit of spending the taxpayers' money on the space program. It was only as Apollo turned the corner and it really looked like we were going to pull this off that it became popular. But I think Roger Launius over at the Smithsonian just wrote a monograph about, popularity during the Apollo program. So we need popular opinion. We need people to see the influence in their local lives. And remember, in politics, particularly for the House members, all politics is local. The space program we've got is largely powered by the thought that there are jobs in my district. Okay, I hate to say it, but it is in some ways a jobs program. And that propels a lot of members' interest in that. We need to get past just the jobs discussion. So we may need more than politics. We're going to have to talk about business. So here's my proposal to this group. I have loved being here. This has been a great time for the choir to get reinvigorated, but we need to quit doing this. This group of folks, if we are going to make a difference, has got to quit talking to ourselves. We talk to ourselves, we're all agreed going to Mars is great. We're all agreed that the space program is great. We're all agreed that this is what we need to do. But that is not the majority opinion that's held out there. So we need to get out of here. We need to get out of this conference. Good thing this is the last panel, right? We need to get out of Washington, D.C., and we need to go out in the country and we need to convert people. And we need to stop, talking to ourselves, and we need to thoroughly engage people who are not engaged in space. We saw a little bit of that with the, more than a little bit with the previous panel talking about inspiring the young people. But inspiring young people, national pride, soft power of the United States are not sellers today. They will not get the appropriations we need. So we need to find the rationale that affects people's lives, and we need to continue to press on it. And I love this cartoon. I love this cartoon. Why are we going to Mars? Well, there's many reasons, but I can think of one big one. Because we're going to make lots and lots of money. Now, we need to figure out how it becomes an economic proposition. We talked a little bit about why did people come to this continent, and why do they still come to this continent? Some people come for religious or political liberty. That is unquestioned. However, Most people came to this continent because they wanted to better themselves. It was about economic betterment. They came to make money. They came to improve their lot in life. And we have to prove to people that going to Mars will improve their lot in life. And believe me, if we get business interested and can prove to them that they can make a profit somehow, some way, and I don't mean just the military-industrial complex of space contractors, but I mean really have a business that turns a profit apart from the government, then we really will have a space program. My favorite closing slide, and I'll get off the podium, future of humanity, as we've discussed here, is in your hands, those of us that are in this auditorium, those of us that are watching on the webcast. Don't screw it up. We need to get out there and get busy. I wanted to give a shout out. I know this is a little bit of a downer. This is not maybe your most positive talk we've had here this week. But I want to give a shout out to Laura Bailey. I saw Laura here yesterday. I haven't seen her today. She is a person, she's an engineer at Johnson Space Center. And when we were trying to return the shuttle to flight, one of the critical activities we had to do was to design, find out how to repair the shuttle thermal protection system in orbit, in zero gravity, in vacuum, with the thermal extremes and so forth. And we had a whole chorus of experts telling us it was impossible, could not be done. And in fact, in the late 70s and around the first part of the 80s when the shuttle started flying, there was a huge effort that NASA did to try to invent that on-orbit repair technique, and it totally failed. It didn't work. They couldn't make it work. And so they gave up, and the conventional wisdom was, this is impossible. After Columbia, we said to Laura and the members of the team with her that it may be impossible, but we've got to make it work. And they went out, young, energetic, innovative people, and they figured out how to do it. And in fact, we made it work. They made it work, not me, but they made it work, and it came together. She's now working on Mars vehicles, Mars habitats, Mars landers. I think if we're going to get to Mars, we need people like Laura. But more importantly, we need people like you, young people in this audience today. Because don't believe all us old experts when we tell you, we tried that 20 years ago and it didn't work. Try it again. Be innovative, be flexible, be persistent, and you'll succeed. That's what we've got to have, and that's the way we'll build political sustainability.